you were on the road to getting shredded. You were doing so well. Things were moving very, very nicely for you. You looked the best you ever had in your life. But ultimately, as always, life will always happen. There was always something that may sway you off, and then you know what needs to be done, but momentum is lost at this point. Why is that? And then what can we do about it? So here is a before, and then here is a now. So if we look at the screen on the left to begin with, this is the before. So this was you right in the beginning stage when you had a pretty colossal task to go and do, denoted here by this big mountain to climb with a flag on the top. Now, when you started out that task, you at first may have thought it was quite scary. You thought, well, my identity is going to be changed. Who I am as a person needs to be changed. And ultimately, I may go through periods of time where, like, my current version of myself must die in order for me to grow to a new one. And that can be quite a scary thing because you're letting go of who you are and who you've been for the longest period of time. It's the unknown of going through this process. You don't know how you're going to feel. You don't know how you're going to react. You don't even know if you're going to be able to do the thing. And you also perceive it to be hard. So with those three things in mind, scary, unknown, and hard, you knew to be diligent to the absolute letter. You thought, well, if I'm going to do this thing that's hard, I better not take a wrong turn. I better check my map multiple times because I don't know what treacherous conditions are going to be up in front of me. So you approach the situation with a level of ambition, or you wouldn't have tried to do it in the first place, but a boatload of humility. Humility is believing that you are a student. You have that student mindset to things where it's like, I know I'm not where I need to be. I'm humble enough to admit that. And then I'm now going to learn and make sure I can become the individual that I need to. It doesn't mean to say that you don't think you're capable of doing it. That's why I telling you to have a level of ambition, but you must always have a student mind. And that mindset, which from what I've seen was coming out in you, was how you were able to climb the ladder and do such a colossal task to get you so far towards the end of the goal. That's why the arrow is facing upwards. Now, here is how things look at the minute. Notice how the task is actually smaller because you have made a boatload of progress. The job is significantly smaller than it once was many, many moons ago. Now, ambition is absolutely still there, or you wouldn't be doing the thing in the first place if you didn't think you could actually achieve it. So ambition is absolutely there. However, look at the way it is now perceived from a mindset. It is comfortable because it's not scary. You know you're not going to die doing it. You're okay with that version of you leaving because he wasn't serving you energy anyway, and you're well aware of this. It's known. You know the route that needs to be taken. You know what needs to be done. And when you know something, you're not going to be as diligent. You're definitely not going to be as fearful or scared. And you're going to approach things in a much more comfortable light. When we were joining the parachute regiment, there was a task we had to do called the Trinasium. This is an aerial confidence course where you are at height and you must walk across like 2 shuffle bars 60 feet in the air. Now, you could shuffle across those beams on the floor if it was literally just on the floor. No questions asked. It's the same when it's up high, but now you have the perception of the floor being so far away from you that things look scary. The first time you do this, you are so diligent. Every inch you move your foot is done with sheer care because you don't want to topple over and spank in and hurt yourself. However, once you've done it a couple of times and you're confident, your approach when you get up there is you're not as diligent with each individual step because you've done it before, so you have confidence, so you understand and it's the known of how this is going to feel. You may still believe it is a hard task, but you know where you have the leeway, you know where you can push, you know where you can cut a corner, you know where you can chill. It's likewise when someone's probably on probation at a new career, they're all over it. They're rigid for 6 months straight and they probably can seduce the management team very well, but then after 6 months, their true colours start to come out, who they really are, the corner-cutting motherfucker that they actually are, let alone all the other things they do when people can't actually see. So this is how we have got to this situation. So ambition is still there, but now you know the task and you know where you can cut corners. It actually means that you do not approach things with the same level of diligence and with the same level of humility. So now how do we fix this? So first of all, we need to go back to basics. That is the absolute first and foremost thing you must do. What worked for you well last time? So you know what worked well for you in order to make such progress. And I think, let's be honest, it starts off with mapping out what you need to do tomorrow and the night before. So write out on your notes page, literally take this action step as of today. Write out what you need to do on your notes page tonight for tomorrow. Factor in what time you're going to wake up. Factor in when you're going to go and do steps. When you are doing your own personal work. When you are going and doing cardio, when you're doing steps. when you're doing training, when you're doing meal prep, what you're doing on the evenings, and then also because you know what you're doing and you're living with intent, you know you're not going to be going off plan, consuming things you shouldn't be doing off plan, because there's a job to be done at hand. You're either on or you're off. There is no in-between space with this. Now, what I would also say is, remember many of times I've drawn out for you how we actually got to the position you were in the first place. So we remembered that. Everyone remember this diagram. You've all probably seen it many of times. So for the longest time, you have stacked rocks known as habits in the basket of the old version of you. And that's why whenever it came to doing something where you had to change, it felt like a second fucking job. It felt like you were swimming upstream. And because of this, you always had this weighing you down. Who you were as a person weighed you down in the past. That's why you couldn't do the thing in the first place. Remember, and you know the answer to this, in order to swing this into the balance, you need to believe you are already the individual. How would he be living? And ultimately, what would he not be doing? Again, it's much easier to cut things out than it is to do new things. So you audited your life and worked out what were the things that are not serving me, what do I need to cut out, maybe who do I need to cut out, what environments do I need to change from. So then what you tended to do was you removed the rocks, the habits out of the old version of you, and you stacked new ones towards the new version of you. So we're sat here. However, what has happened over the period of time is the balance is not completely fucked. It looks something like this. Notice how sure you're still better than you were. You're actually moving down towards the goal, but it's so inhumanely slow, it may as well be maintained. And that's because, yeah, sure, you've got the new habits, but your old ones, I'm not saying you're ever going to eradicate all old and bad habits, but you've started to stack those old habits again, and they are slowing you down. That old version of you is creeping back and preventing your progress. So you're sat in a bit of a stalemate and not really making the progress. Remove the rocks from this basket as a non-negotiable. Ruthlessly look at your life and think, where have I been slacking? What bad habits have been creeping in? Have I been missing my bedtime? Have I been spending too much time on social media? Have I been watching things I probably shouldn't? And ultimately, that's led to you making the choices that you have so far. So ruthlessly cut out and remove the old bad habits like you've done in the past. And that way you will allow the new habits to set in and sway towards the balance. And when you are acting in the athlete version of you, you will swim downstream towards the goal. And that is all I will say on this. So this is what to do in the event when you fall off. Watch this video as many times as you need to. Get back in the cold water, have the humility for the task at hand, and go and execute and finish the job like you know you can do.